What a peculiar thing time is. We look at it as if it were a straight line, a ruler laid out before us. This happened, then that, and one day something else will follow. We become obsessed with sequencing, with schedules, with the idea that life must deliver what we desire according to the clock we carry in our minds. And so, when something we long for does not arrive when we expect it, we call it delayed. We mourn the absence, we question the silence, and we grow disillusioned, imagining that if it is not here now, perhaps it never will be. But there is a flaw in that logic, a deep misunderstanding of the nature of life and the intelligence that governs it. You see, the river doesn't hurry, and yet it arrives. The stars do not shine on command, but they never fail to rise. The tree does not force the bud to bloom in winter, for it knows there is a rhythm to all things, a sacred harmony that does not bend to our impatience. So why then do you believe that because your desire hasn't arrived yet, it has been denied? That because the door hasn't opened, it must be locked forever? No, the truth is simpler and more beautiful. What you thought was delayed is not denied. It awaits you now. But here's the catch. The now I speak of is not a moment on your wristwatch. It is not a date circled in red on your calendar. It is a condition of being. It is a moment of inner ripeness, a moment when the soil of your life has become fertile enough to receive what is meant to be planted. That which you yearn for cannot bloom in you until you are ready to hold it without fear, to love it without attachment, and to release it, if needed, without breaking. The universe does not deny. It prepares. It aligns things in ways you cannot see, arranges them like an unseen hand setting pieces on a board, and it waits patiently for you to be in a position not just to possess what you want, but to become what you need to be in order to keep it. You may believe you've been waiting for the thing to come to you, but more often than not, the thing has been waiting for you to come to it. There are no accidents in this choreography. There is no missed opportunity, no ship that sailed without you. Every so-called delay is simply life taking the longer road so that the journey does not destroy you before the destination can transform you. You may think the waiting has worn you down, but perhaps it has been shaping you, stripping away what is not real, burning off the fog of desperation, preparing you to receive with clarity what you once begged for in confusion. And then, when the moment ripens, not a minute early, not a second late, you realize that what you believed was behind schedule was always right on time. You will look back and laugh at your panic, at your doubts, at the nights you cursed the silence, and you will see that the silence was not a void, it was gestation. It was the sacred pause before the curtain rose. It was the womb of all things becoming. Life is not a marketplace where you pay the price and take the product. It is a garden where you sow in faith and reap in seasons. And the seed of your desire, once planted, is not forgotten. It grows beneath the surface, and if you dig it up every morning to check its progress, it may never bloom. But if you trust it, if you nourish the soil of your heart and keep your gaze open, then one day, quite without warning, it will rise. The echo you thought had faded was simply taking the long way back to you. The dream you thought was too far gone was simply circling higher before its descent. The promise you thought had broken was merely maturing in a place beyond sight. And when it returns, when it appears, you will know it was never denied, only delayed, only awaiting the precise and perfect moment that is now. What appears as a delay is often misinterpreted as rejection, and in that misinterpretation we invite unnecessary suffering. We assume that if something has not happened when we expected it, it must never happen at all. That if the door hasn't opened when we knocked, it has been sealed shut. But life, in its wisdom, does not operate under the tyranny of our personal timelines. It is not subject to our sense of urgency or bound by the artificial constructs we've wrapped around the passing of time. What seems delayed is often not delayed at all. It is in motion, only on a wavelength we cannot yet hear, in a layer of existence not yet visible to our eyes. There is a peculiar tendency in the human mind to equate absence with abandonment. If something is not here, it must not be coming. If someone has not replied, they must not care. If we are not where we dreamed we'd be, it must mean the dream was foolish. But this is a form of blindness, a kind of spiritual nearsightedness that confuses waiting with wasting and forgets that life has never once rushed its own process. The seasons change when they're ready, not when we're impatient. The caterpillar becomes a butterfly, not when it's tired of crawling, but when something far deeper signals that the time of transformation has come. And so, when life appears to be delaying something you feel ready for, perhaps it is not questioning your worthiness, but orchestrating your alignment. Consider how many things in your life have arrived not when you wanted them, but precisely when you were ready to hold them with the hands of wisdom instead of the grip of desperation. How many people, opportunities, and revelations entered your path not when you were demanding them, but when you had grown into the kind of person who could see them clearly and use them well. The universe does not work on demand. It is not a vending machine where you insert your prayers and out drops your miracle. It is more like an echo, returning not just what you ask for, but the frequency from which you asked. If you call out with anxiety and fear, the reply may be silence, not as punishment, but as protection. Life delays not to deny, but to ensure that what is coming does not become a burden, that the weight of your blessings does not crush you before you have the strength to carry them. Yet the act of dealing says, I will do this month. There is a hidden intelligence in this unfolding, a sacred choreography taking place in the unseen. Like an artist painting in layers, life adds dimension and detail long before the final strokes reveal the image. But we often stand too close to the canvas, too impatient for the masterpiece to be completed. So we assume the work has been abandoned. We forget that time is not a line. It is a spiral, a wave, a breath. What you think is moving away may simply be circling back, gathering momentum, waiting for the moment when you are finally still enough to receive it. So much of our frustration with delay comes from the illusion of control. We imagine that if we plan enough, push hard enough, manifest loud enough, we can dictate the rhythm of our becoming. But life laughs at such rigidity. It bends and curves and detours in ways that seem cruel until we look back and see the elegance in its redirections. What you called a delay may have been a detour that spared you heartache, that prevented you from arriving too early at a place that would have swallowed you whole. What you call failure may have been a reroute toward the version of you that could actually thrive. You were not made to sprint through life. You were made to evolve. And evolution by its nature does not obey the stopwatch. It happens slowly, invisibly, with a wisdom far beyond your own. So the delay you fear may actually be the divine pause, a moment of divine alignment, where everything is being arranged with precision and care, so that when your moment comes, it is not just a moment. It is the moment, the one that changes everything, the one that feels like it was waiting for you all along. It's been an onslaught. Let yourself soften into this. Let yourself breathe through the silence, through the unanswered prayers, through the blank spaces where you thought your breakthrough would be. Not everything is lost just because it has not arrived. Not every silence is empty. There are things moving on your behalf, in the shadows, in the quiet corners of time, and they are moving not according to your will, but according to your readiness. Because life does not just want to give you what you want. It wants to give you what you are ready to grow with. And readiness is not determined by your longing. It is not measured by how badly you want something or how long you've waited. It is found in how much you've grown during the wait. It's found in how you speak to yourself in the silence. It's found in whether your hands are clenched in resistance or open in surrender. Life does not withhold to punish. It waits to protect. It waits to elevate. It waits because it knows that there is a version of you in the making who will not just receive what you desire, but who will steward it with love, gratitude, and peace. There is no need to panic in the waiting. There is no reason to believe that delay is rejection. You have not missed it. You are not late. You are not being punished or forgotten. You are being tuned, refined, positioned, and strengthened, so that when what is yours comes into view, you will recognize it not as a surprise, but as a homecoming, as something that never left you, never denied you, only awaited you. You do not receive what you desire by force, but by resonance. And that is one of the most overlooked truths in this dance of life. We are taught to chase, to push, to climb and grasp with urgency, as if desire itself is enough to unlock the treasures we long for. But longing without inner readiness only creates noise. It sends out a frequency of lack, not fulfillment. And the universe, being far more sensitive and intelligent than we imagine, does not respond to noise, it responds to clarity, to energy that vibrates in harmony with the thing desired. To truly receive, you must be able to hold what you ask for without fear. That is where the difference lies between wanting and being ready. Most people want love, but not all are ready to love without clinging. Most desire abundance, but few are prepared to live without anxiety over loss. We say we want peace, yet we fill our minds with chaos. So what happens then? Life does not withhold to punish. It waits for you to tune yourself to the frequency of what you are asking for. You cannot grasp the ocean in a cup not built to hold it. In the same way, life does not pour its blessings into a container that would overflow from unprepared hands. That doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means you're still being formed into someone who can receive without trembling. Receiving is not a passive act. It is not waiting at the door until something knocks. It is an active transformation, a becoming. It is allowing yourself to be changed, so that what you've prayed for doesn't break you when it comes. This is why so many people, when they finally get what they asked for too soon, lose it just as quickly. A heart that hasn't healed cannot hold love. A mind still bound by scarcity will turn wealth into burden. A soul that has not found stillness will confuse peace for boredom. And so, the universe, in its mercy, does not deliver based on pleading. It delivers based on readiness. Not readiness in the eyes of the world, but readiness within, the kind you cannot fake, the kind that life feels in your energy, your intentions, your inner atmosphere. Readiness is silent. It doesn't announce itself with impatience or tantrums. It arises quietly, like dawn slipping over the mountains, subtle but undeniable. And when it comes, you'll notice something strange. The very thing you once chased no longer feels distant. It feels natural. It approaches you, not with fanfare, but with a sense of belonging. Not because it suddenly appeared, but because you stopped resisting the version of yourself required to hold it. This is not about pretending to be perfect. It's not about earning blessings through suffering or delay. It's about becoming aligned with the truth of what you ask for. Because everything you want carries a frequency, a rhythm, a spiritual weight. And unless your spirit is in tune with it, you will find yourself exhausted trying to carry something that isn't yet yours to carry. The flower does not bloom because it demands to. It blooms because the conditions have become right. So too with you. The truth is, you're not waiting for the thing is waiting for you. It's waiting for the day when your energy no longer says, please save me, and instead says, I am enough, with or without it. That shift changes everything, because now you no longer need what you desire in order to feel whole. You found wholeness first, and that is the moment when your desire finds you, not as a reward, but as a reflection of who you've become. People often confuse this with surrender, thinking surrender is giving up. But real surrender is the opposite. It is the full embodiment of trust. It's the space where you stop trying to twist life into your timeline, and you begin to believe that life actually knows what it's doing. It's the moment where you stop begging for the outcome. When it happens, you have to start all of delusion of it. It's the moment where you stop begging for the outcome and start aligning your energy with the reality. You see, this path is not about hustle, it's about harmony. It's not about shouting louder, it's about tuning deeper. And tuning means healing. It means letting go of the stories that told you you're not worthy. It means releasing the old wounds that told you love always leaves, or joy always fades, or abundance always comes with strings attached. Because until those stories die, you'll subconsciously push away the very things you claim to desire. This is the great paradox. When you need it too much, you're not yet ready. But when you can want it without needing it to define you, it flows in like breath. That's when your being is in resonance with the thing. That's when you don't just hold it, you dance with it. You cherish it without fearing its departure. You honor it without shrinking yourself to keep it. And in that space, the energy between you and your desire becomes effortless. So the real work is not in the chase, but in the tuning. In asking yourself not just what you want, but why you want it, and who you will be when it comes. Are you building yourself to be a match for the thing you seek, or are you demanding it to validate your value? because if the latter is true, the blessing would destroy you. But if you've already found your value without it, then when it comes, it will only expand what you've already built. You must understand that this is not a game of reward and punishment. It's a mirror. What you call delay may simply be the time it takes for your reflection to match what you seek. And when it does, when the resonance hums just right, there is no resistance left. The lock clicks open. The waiting ends, not with fanfare, but with a quiet knowing. Of course it's here. I've become the person who knew it would be. Because readiness in the end is not about time. It's about the frequency of your soul and what it's ready to hold without fear. Time is a peculiar illusion we've all agreed to live under. We treat it as a strict and linear progression from past to present to future, as if it were a train track laid out in one direction and we are the passengers, forever moving forward. But this understanding of time, while practical for clocks and calendars, falls apart when you start to observe life itself. The human soul doesn't operate on a schedule. Emotions don't flow in straight lines. Growth does not happen in predictable increments. What we experience as delay is often nothing more than life dancing to a rhythm beyond our comprehension, one that refuses to conform to the tick-tock tyranny we've grown so attached to. We say things like, "It should have happened by now," as if we are the sole arbiters of destiny. We stare at the age on our ID cards and panic because something hasn't arrived, a job, a partner, a dream, and we assume that because it didn't appear according to the deadlines we imagine, it must be gone for good. But who decided the timing? Who set the clock that we feel obligated to obey? Is it the world? Our parents? The ghost of who we thought we'd be? Whatever the source, it's rarely the wisdom of the present moment. That wisdom is quiet, patient, and unconcerned with clocks. When you let go of the belief that time is a ruler and begin to see it as a wave, something soft and curved and alive, everything begins to shift. Suddenly, your so-called delay becomes a chapter, a necessary pause, a rest note in the music of your life, not an absence of sound, but a deliberate silence that makes the melody sweeter when it returns. What you believed was time lost becomes a rich field of becoming. You weren't falling behind. You were being prepared in ways only silence can do. And the more you resist that silence, the longer it stretches, not because life is cruel, but because it won't send you forward until your footing is sure. In truth, you cannot fall behind in a dance that was choreographed specifically for you. Your path is not identical to anyone else's. Your timing is not a replication of someone else's timeline. Yet we torture ourselves with comparison. Look at them, we say, already married, already wealthy, already known, and we curse the sky for not handing us the same milestones, forgetting entirely that we are not living their life. We are living ours. And our unfolding, no matter how slow it may seem, is deeply sacred. There is no delay in a life that is learning exactly what it must in each moment. The irony is, the more you try to force your life into a linear pattern, the more it resists. It begins to whisper, then nudge, then shout, until finally it breaks the things you were clinging to, just to free you from the prison of your own expectations. You might call that a setback. You might call it failure. But what if it was timing correcting itself? What if life was trying to pull you out of the illusion that there is a fixed order to success and joy and healing? There are moments that come not because the hour struck, but because your soul shifted, because something inside you let go, because a wound you didn't know you were carrying finally began to close. And in that moment, without warning, without announcement, what you thought had been delayed appears. Not because it was waiting for the right day on a calendar, but because it was waiting for you to arrive at a deeper place within yourself. The moment you step into that inner alignment, the outer world shifts to meet you. But this is why we must stop treating life as a race and begin treating it as a revelation. There is nothing linear about becoming. It spirals, it returns, it folds back into itself. You may revisit the same lesson 10 times, but on the 11th, something cracks open and light pours in. You may plant a seed and wait years without fruit, only to one day see it blossom overnight. And you'll wonder if it happened suddenly, but it didn't. It happened slowly, beneath the surface, outside the domain of your control. We don't like this. We want formulas. We want guarantees. We want to know that if we put in the effort today, we'll get the result tomorrow. But life doesn't play by those rules. Life is not interested in your certainty. It's interested in your trust. It's interested in whether you can stay open, stay soft, stay faithful, even when nothing seems to be happening. That's the true test. Can you hold your belief in the absence of evidence? Can you still move forward when the road disappears beneath your feet? Because that's when the real shift happens, not when you get what you want, but when you realize you no longer need the timing to prove your worth. You're not late. You never were. You're just arriving at a different pace, to a different destination, through a different path. And what is yours cannot miss you, even if it seems to take the long way around. It is tethered to your spirit, not your schedule. It follows your vibration, not your anxiety. And when it comes, it won't feel rushed or sudden. It will feel right. It will feel like breathing, like something ancient that finally caught up with you, or perhaps something future that was waiting for you to become who you are now. Either way, it's not delayed, it's precise, not random, not forgotten. It's the echo of your own readiness returning to greet you. And it couldn't have come sooner, not because it wasn't willing, but because you weren't ready to meet it, without fear, without force, without needing it to fix you. So release the idea that you are behind. There is no behind in a life that is uniquely yours. There is only readiness. And life, this strange, beautiful, uncontrollable current, is always prepared to deliver. When the music of your spirit matches the dance, it's been waiting to perform with you all along. And in the stillness of waiting, something extraordinary takes place, though we often fail to recognize it because we're too consumed by the absence of what we want. We mistake the silence for stagnation, the delay for a void. But what if that void is actually the most fertile ground of all? What if the waiting is not a pause in your life, but the very place where your becoming takes root? We long for movement, for signs, for motion that proves our desires are on the way. But the truth is, most of your transformation happens not in the arrival, but in the anticipation. The waiting is not empty. It is active, alive, mysterious. The waiting is the becoming. You are not who you were when you first asked for what you wanted. That person had a vision, perhaps even a desperate hunger. But they were often filled with illusions, assumptions, and fears too heavy for the dream they carried. So life, in its deep intelligence, creates a space not to torment you, but to transform you, to melt away everything that is not yet ready, to dissolve what clings, what panics, what grasps, to purify the vessel, so that when the gift finally arrives, it doesn't arrive to a stranger. It arrives to someone who has become the living reflection of the thing desired. It is in the waiting that you grow, not always visibly, not in ways that others will notice or applaud, but in ways that shape your essence. The waiting pulls up old roots, breaks hardened soil, brings to the surface wounds that were buried too deep to heal. It is uncomfortable, often excruciating. You feel exposed, like your heart is being held open for longer than it should be. But that exposure is necessary. There can be no deep planting in soil that has never been broken. And so, life tills your soul during the waiting, making space for something far greater than what your surface desire once imagined. You see, the waiting is where you begin to confront your true motivations. You start to ask deeper questions, not just when will it come, but why do I want it? What do I believe it will fix in me? Who will I become if it never comes? These are sacred questions, the kind that carve out new dimensions in your being. The longer you sit with them, the more you realize that what you thought you needed to be whole may not be what you actually need at all. And in that realization, a shift begins. You stop waiting to be rescued and start rising as someone who can hold their own, becoming without panic. But the waiting is not just internal. It is also how the world responds to your transformation. Life rearranges itself, pieces moving quietly, doors aligning in places you cannot see. You are not the only thing being prepared. So is the opportunity, the relationship, the abundance. The waiting synchronizes your inner growth with the unfolding of outer circumstances, so that when they finally meet, they do so with harmony instead of collision. If the thing came too soon, it might overwhelm you. If you arrive too early, you might ruin it. But in the waiting, life ensures both you and what you seek mature together, so that the meeting becomes a moment of divine timing. So many people try to escape this part. They numb themselves, distract themselves, try to fill the waiting with noise and substitutes. They want something, anything, to happen, just so they don't have to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. But discomfort is the very forge of transformation. You cannot become more without shedding something of the old. And the old does not leave quietly. It leaves in the waiting. It leaves when you no longer give it the power to define you. It leaves when you learn how to be still, how to trust the dark, how to stop treating time like a thief and begin treating it like a sculptor. This is the paradox. What looks like nothing is actually everything. The moment when nothing seems to be changing is the moment when everything is being rearranged beneath the surface. Think of the seed buried in the soil. To the naked eye, there's no progress, only stillness. But inside, something is breaking open, stretching toward light it cannot yet see. The shell is cracking, the roots are forming, and once the breakthrough comes, it will seem sudden to everyone who didn't witness the becoming, but you'll know it was never sudden. It was the slow, faithful work of time. There is a kind of courage required in waiting. Not the bold, loud courage of action, but the quiet, enduring kind. The courage to keep believing without proof, to keep showing up to your life when it feels like nothing is moving, to keep becoming even when the world has forgotten your name. That courage reshapes you. It builds character, not performance. Integrity, not entitlement. Entitlement, and those are the very traits that will sustain you when what you've been waiting for finally arrives. So perhaps the gift is not the thing you're waiting for. Perhaps the real gift is who you're becoming in the wait. Perhaps the delay is not a denial, but an invitation. To slow down, to sink deeper, to anchor yourself in something more lasting than quick answers or fast results. Maybe this is your season of hiddenness, not because you are being punished, but because you are being protected. Because what's growing inside of you is too sacred to expose before it's ready. And if you can accept that, if you can learn to honor the waiting as part of the promise rather than an obstacle to it, everything changes. You no longer chase time, you move with it. You no longer resent the silence, you listen to it. You no longer measure your worth by how fast your dreams manifest. You measure it by how gracefully you grow while you wait. And that grace, that peace, that rooted sacred becoming is what finally opens the way for what was always meant to be yours, not in a rush, not in a frenzy, but in a moment so still, so aligned, it feels like it was never apart from you at all. There is a strange and liberating thing that happens when you finally let go, not of the desire itself, but of the pressure you've built around it. When you stop strangling the dream with your timelines, when you stop trying to bend reality into your will, something remarkable begins to stir. Not outside you first, but within. There's a loosening, a softening, a release from the tight grip that once clutched at what you believed had to happen. And in that surrender, not of the dream, but of the control, you awaken a different kind of power. One that doesn't chase, but attracts. One that doesn't beg, but resonates. The moment you let go of the timeline is the moment it begins to appear, not as a trick of fate, but as a mirror to your inner state of peace. Holding on too tightly creates noise. It sends signals of lack, of need, of distrust to life itself. It communicates an energy that says this is missing rather than this is becoming. And the universe is always listening, always attuned not to your words, but to your vibration. When your soul shouts in desperation, life doesn't rush to your aid out of pity. It often waits. It waits until you stop shouting. It waits until your energy shifts from panic to peace, from need to knowing. Most people spend their lives in a constant state of tension, striving, planning, grasping for something just beyond their reach. They believe that if they could only get there, wherever there is, they would finally be at peace. And yet the moment they get close, the destination shifts, like the horizon retreating as you chase it. The world then becomes a treadmill, and the more you run, the more you believe you're getting somewhere. But you're not. You're just exhausting yourself, missing the music that's playing all around you. We are not here to arrive. We are here to dance. Life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be lived, moment by moment, breath by breath. And in that space between your thoughts, in the silence beneath the noise of your mind, there is something profoundly alive waiting for your attention. This is the doorway to a new beginning, not in some distant future, but right here, in the stillness of now. It's funny how the more we try to control things, the more we suffer. Like clutching water in our hands, the tighter we hold, the quicker it escapes. And yet the moment we relax, truly relax, not as a technique, not as another thing to achieve, but simply because we are tired of pretending to be in control, we begin to float. We begin to see that the current of life has always known the way. And it is only our resistance to the flow that has caused the turbulence. Imagine for a moment that you've been carrying a heavy backpack filled with all your worries, your regrets, your fears about the future. Now imagine setting it down. Not because you've solved every problem or answered every question, but simply because it's no longer necessary to carry it. You don't need to carry the past into the next moment. In fact, you never could. You are only dragging shadows, mistaking them for something solid. When you stop, when you sit quietly and do absolutely nothing, life reveals itself as it is. Fluid, playful, mysterious. And it begins again, always new, always fresh. The mind, of course, will protest. It will say, but I need to know, I need a plan, I need to be sure. And yet, have you ever really been sure? Has certainty ever protected you from change? Life has never needed your permission to unfold. It has only waited for your participation. And participation does not mean forcing things into shape. It means dancing with what is, allowing space for the unknown to speak. So if you feel lost, if you feel weary from all the striving, that is not failure, that is the invitation. When the old structures fall apart, it is not the end, it is the opening. The dissolution of the known is the whisper of something deeper, something that cannot be named, only lived. And it is in that space, that quiet surrender, that something entirely unexpected can arise. A new rhythm, a new way of being, a beautiful new beginning that was never missing, only waiting to be seen. To relax, then, is not laziness. It is an act of profound trust. Trust in the intelligence of life. Trust that you are not separate from the unfolding, but an expression of it. You are the wave in the ocean. You are not being pushed forward. You are being carried. Let go, not because you give up, but because you no longer need to push. You no longer need to pretend that life must be conquered. You are already home. The scenery will change, yes, the story will twist and turn. But the still point, the eye of the storm, is always available. It is not found in the future. It is now. The beginning you seek is not ahead. It is already arriving with every breath you take. Let yourself be surprised. Let yourself be remade. Most people are raised to believe that life is a journey with a clear destination, a place of achievement, success, or enlightenment that, once reached, will bring lasting peace and fulfillment. This idea is embedded so deeply in our cultural framework that we often don't question it. We're taught to chase after degrees, promotions, relationships, and ideals with the belief that once we attain them, life will finally begin. And so we keep running, always reaching for the next milestone, always looking ahead. But this forward-leaning posture blinds us to what is actually happening right now. The present moment becomes something to get through on the way to something better, something more meaningful. And in doing so, we overlook the simple truth that life isn't about arrival, it's about presence. There is a subtle, almost poetic misunderstanding in the way we approach our existence. We act as though we are on a straight line from birth to some final destination. But life doesn't move in straight lines. It moves in spirals, in rhythms, in waves. It breathes, pauses, accelerates, and slows down. It isn't linear, and it certainly doesn't reward those who are best at pretending to be ahead of schedule. Instead, life rewards those who are fully awake to it, who listen to its tempo, who dance rather than march. The idea that happiness lies at the end of effort is perhaps one of the most persistent illusions. It keeps us running toward a mirage. The moment we get close, it vanishes, and a new mirage appears on the horizon. More money, more love, more clarity. And so the cycle continues with the present moment always sacrificed for the promise of a future that never truly arrives. Children understand something that adults tend to forget. They don't play to win, they play for the joy of the game itself. When a child runs in circles or builds a sandcastle, they are not concerned with the outcome. They are immersed in the now. They are fully there. Their joy doesn't come from completion, it comes from engagement. And somewhere along the way, as we age and absorb the world's ideas about success, we lose that natural sense of presence. We begin to treat life as a means to an end rather than the end itself. When you view life as a performance that's constantly being judged, every action becomes tense and calculated. You don't laugh freely because you're worried about appearing foolish. You don't rest because you're afraid of falling behind. You don't explore because detours feel like delays. But what if all of that was simply an illusion? An elaborate game played by minds afraid to pause? What if life isn't a performance, but a piece of music? And just like music, the purpose isn't to reach the final note. The purpose is to enjoy every note as it's played. Think of your favorite piece of music. You don't skip to the end to enjoy it. You let it move through you, note by note, beat by beat. You allow yourself to be taken by the rhythm, surprised by the melody, moved by the harmony. Life is the same. Every moment, every breath, every mundane detail is a note in the symphony of your existence. And to rush through it in search of some final crescendo is to miss the point entirely. Life is not something you master, it's something you participate in. The more you treat it like a task to complete, the more it slips away unnoticed. We have been conditioned to live as if we are on trial, always preparing a case for our worthiness, our significance. But the truth is, you don't need to prove anything. You were never meant to earn life, you are life. The tree doesn't strain to be a tree. The ocean doesn't try to be vast. The sun doesn't work hard to shine. They simply are. And in being, they fulfill their nature effortlessly. You too are not here to be more than what you already are. You are here to be fully what you are in this very moment. The desire to be somewhere else, to be someone else, to do something else, is often just a resistance to what is. But what if there is no better place to get to? What if this moment, no matter how imperfect or uncertain, is the only moment that holds the key to your awakening? That doesn't mean you won't grow or change, but that growth doesn't have to be a struggle. It can be a natural unfolding, like a flower opening to the sun. You don't have to force your way forward. You simply have to stop running from where you are. When you let go of the idea that life is a race, something softens inside you. The inner critic quiets. The tension eases. You begin to notice things again. The way light falls through the window. The way your breath rises and falls without effort. The sound of distant laughter. These are not obstacles in the path. This is where life actually happens. Not tomorrow, not someday, but here, now, in this moment that keeps slipping through your fingers while you wait for something more. To relax into this awareness is not passivity, it is aliveness. It is attention without resistance. It is being in harmony with the unfolding of the universe rather than standing apart from it trying to fix or control it. When you truly see that there is nowhere to get to, you become available to everything. The anxiety begins to melt. The striving loses its grip. And you realize that what you were searching for was never out there. It was here, all along, waiting for you to slow down enough to notice it. You don't need to be more productive. You don't need to be more successful. You don't need to be more enlightened. You simply need to remember how to be. Just be. And in that being, you will find the very thing you are chasing, not as a goal, but as a living reality, a still point in the turning world, a note that belongs perfectly to the song. The tension we carry in our lives, the constant tightening of the mind and body, often stems from the illusion that we are the ones directing the entire show, that if we do not plan, control, push, and pull at life, it will fall apart. We grip the steering wheel of existence so tightly, fearing that any loosening of our grasp will result in chaos. But what we seldom realize is that this very act of control, the obsessive need to manage every outcome, to fix every problem before it arises, is the root of much of our suffering. The very effort to secure life against uncertainty creates an inner climate of fear, stress, and unease. And so we find ourselves not living, but managing. Not experiencing, but calculating. For someone clenching their fists, holding tightly to something imagined, something believed to be essential for safety, but finding instead that the tighter we clench, the more discomfort we create. And yet the hand was never meant to stay closed. It was meant to open, to release. Life flows not through effortful grasping, but through graceful allowing. The control we think we must maintain is actually a mirage. Just as a river doesn't need our permission to flow, the unfolding of life doesn't need us to direct it. It moves with or without our interference. And often it moves more freely when we step aside and stop resisting its current. The moment we relax, not as an act of passivity, but as a profound letting go, something shifts. The weight we've been carrying doesn't suddenly vanish, but our relationship to it changes. We stop trying to lift it and instead allow it to rest. We stop pushing against life and begin to float with it. There is no fight in the flow. It simply moves, and we are invited to move with it. We are so conditioned to believe that control is the way to safety that we fear what will happen if we let go. But what we often find is that the chaos we feared was not in the world, but in our resistance to the world as it is. This resistance is subtle. It hides in the way we rehearse conversations in our minds, the way we plan contingencies for every scenario, the way we brace ourselves even when nothing is happening. We walk through life as though something terrible might happen at any moment, and so we are always slightly prepared, always slightly guarded. But this guard becomes a wall, and soon we can no longer feel what it's like to simply be at ease, to be unguarded, to be open. In this openness, Life breathes differently. It speaks in a softer voice. It moves with a rhythm that is more like music than machinery. Letting go of control is not the same as giving up. It is the recognition that the universe is not a hostile force to be managed, but a living intelligence that knows how to unfold. Just as a seed doesn't need to be instructed to grow, just as a caterpillar doesn't need to be taught how to become a butterfly, your life doesn't need to be forced into shape. It already knows where it's going. Your task is not to wrestle it into perfection, but to trust its unfolding. That trust isn't blind, it's experiential. You begin to trust when you see again and again that life moves in unexpected yet meaningful ways, when you stop interfering. Control is born from fear, and fear is born from the idea that you are separate from life, that you must stand outside of it and manage it, direct it, fix it. But what if you are not separate? What if you are life unfolding through this unique form, through this particular perspective? What if the intelligence that makes the stars burn and the tides rise is the same intelligence that beats your heart and breathes your lungs? In that case, your role is not to dominate life, but to listen to it, to respond to it, to participate in it with curiosity and humility. There is a deep intelligence in surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of alignment. When you stop demanding that life fit your expectations, you begin to see it as it is. And what you see is often far more spacious and mysterious than anything your plans could have created. The mind, so full of agendas, cannot comprehend the vastness of the unknown, but the heart knows how to live there. The heart does not need certainty, it only needs presence. And presence is born the moment we relax into what is. The paradox is that when we stop trying to control life, we gain a deeper kind of power, a quiet, grounded strength that comes from being rooted in the truth of now. This power is not loud, it is not aggressive. It is the power of the tree that bends in the wind but does not break. It is the power of water that flows around obstacles rather than shattering against them. It is the power that moves without resistance, that adapts without fear, that trusts the rhythm of change. To relax into the unknown is to discover that the unknown is not against you. It is a field of infinite potential. It is the womb of creation. And it can only be accessed when you are no longer trying to manipulate it into certainty. Every moment you relax, every moment you let go of needing to know, you create space for something new to emerge. Something beyond your plans, beyond your imagination. This is where life becomes a mystery again. Not a problem to be solved, but a wonder to be lived. When we look closely, we find that all the great moments in life, love, inspiration, creativity, joy, arise not from control, but from surrender. They appear when we are fully available, not when we are orchestrating every detail. The most beautiful experiences come uninvited, like unexpected guests. And they stay only as long as we don't try to trap them. To live is to trust that life knows how to move, that you are part of a larger intelligence that does not need your control, only your presence. Relaxing into this truth is not a technique, it is a remembering of something ancient, something already known deep within. There is a quiet space that exists beneath the surface of your thoughts, a stillness that is always there, waiting. Most of the time we are so entangled in the noise of our minds that we don't even notice it. Thoughts chase one another like shadows at dusk, and we become identified with them, as if we are the noise itself. We run after answers, chase clarity, try to solve the equation of life with the same mind that's creating the confusion. But in doing so, we miss something profound. We miss the silence, not the absence of sound, but the still, vibrant presence that underlies all movement. That space is where life truly begins again, not with effort, not with striving, but with a simple shift of attention, a quiet return to what has always been. Presence is not a concept to understand. It's a reality to experience. And you don't need to earn it. You don't need to meditate for years to touch it. You simply need to stop, even just for a moment, and notice what's already here. The breath, the heartbeat, the sensation of the body resting in space. These are not separate from presence. They are its language. When you tune into them without commentary, without trying to analyze or interpret, something opens. It's not dramatic, it's subtle, like noticing the space between the notes in a song. But in that space, there is a kind of freedom you've been longing for without knowing it. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And it's always whispering the same thing. You are already home. We often think transformation is something that happens in the future, after we've fixed ourselves, after we've become worthy. But transformation happens the moment we drop into the now. The moment we stop arguing with reality and simply allow it to be. This allowance doesn't mean passivity. It means receptivity. It means no longer filtering every experience through the mind's narrow definitions of good and bad, success and failure. It means seeing things as they are. And in that seeing, something begins to shift, naturally. There is no need to force change. Change happens the moment we become present with what is. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the essence that holds all movement, just like the sky holds the weather, the storms, the sunshine, the clouds. Without trying to change any of it, you too are the space in which thoughts, emotions, and experiences arise. You are not the chaos. You are the awareness of it. And the moment you realize this, you no longer need to get rid of anything. You no longer need to fix yourself to be at peace. Peace isn't a reward, it's a recognition. This recognition is so simple that the mind constantly overlooks it. The mind wants something more complex, something it can work on, solve, and achieve. But presence is not a goal. It is what remains when the search ends. It doesn't require belief. It doesn't require effort. It only requires that you stop trying to get somewhere else, that you become still enough to notice that everything you've been chasing is already here, though in a different form than you expected. The quiet joy of being, the fullness of an ordinary moment, the miracle of breath flowing in and out, without your control, without your permission. In that stillness, you begin to see through the illusion that your value depends on what you do, how much you accomplish, or how others perceive you. You begin to sense a deeper truth that you are inherently enough because you exist, because you are. The need to prove yourself starts to dissolve. The pressure to constantly improve begins to soften. You don't lose your motivation. You simply stop using it to run away from yourself. You start moving from wholeness rather than from lack. And from this place, a different kind of action arises. Not frantic, not desperate, but organic and true. You no longer act because you must earn your worth. You act because it's an expression of who you are here and now. Your actions become aligned with life, not in opposition to it. You begin to trust what emerges in the silence. Insights come not as strategies, but as deep knowing. Creativity flows, not because you force it, but because you are available to it. Healing happens not because you fix yourself, but because you stop resisting what you feel. There is an intelligence in presence that goes beyond logic. It's the same intelligence that tells birds when to migrate, that opens flowers in spring, that spins galaxies in the vastness of space. This intelligence doesn't need to be understood. It needs to be trusted. And you can't trust it if you're always caught in the mind's noise, always planning, predicting, analyzing. At some point, you must be willing to step into the unknown, to rest in not knowing, to allow yourself to be led by something deeper than thought. That is where life renews itself. That is the space of the new beginning. Not out there, not later, but here, in the quiet awareness of this very breath. It is in this space that healing takes place without effort. Wounds begin to close, not because we force them, but because we stop reopening them. Old narratives lose their power, not because we rewrite them, but because we stop feeding them with our attention. You begin to feel again, not as a task, but as a return. Emotions rise and fall like waves on the ocean, and you stop clinging to the highs or fearing the lows. You let them be, knowing that you are the ocean itself, not the passing wave. And in this realization, you become intimate with life in a new way, not as a problem to solve, but as a presence to experience. The more deeply you rest in this awareness, the more you realize that nothing was ever missing. You weren't broken, you weren't behind, you weren't lost, you were simply distracted, lost in thought, caught in doing, searching for what cannot be found in the future, because it lives in the now. And now is not a static moment. It is a living, breathing, infinite field of possibility. When you meet it fully, when you give yourself to it without resistance, you discover that the transformation you long for doesn't come through struggle. It comes through surrender, through listening, through being. To relax is often mistaken for laziness in a world obsessed with productivity, performance, and proving. The idea of slowing down, of pausing without an agenda, can seem irresponsible, even threatening to the conditioned mind. But true relaxation is not idleness. It is not neglect or giving up. It is an act of profound trust. Trust in life, in the present moment, and most importantly, in the deeper intelligence that animates everything. When you relax, you are not doing nothing. You are aligning. You are tuning in to something older and wiser than all your plans and all your worries. You are remembering that you were never meant to carry the entire world on your shoulders. If you become a light, you shed your light. You shed your light that others may see, and you shed your light. That is a setting up. When you become a light, you are terrifying. This trust doesn't come from reading the right books or collecting spiritual ideas. It comes from letting go of the belief that you are separate from the universe, that you must fight your way through life, defend yourself at every corner, and control every outcome in order to survive. That belief, though deeply ingrained, is an illusion. You were born into a world that already knew how to carry you. The sun rises without your effort. The seasons change without your permission. The breath flows in and out of your body with no input from your mind. What makes you think the rest of life requires your constant interference? What if you don't need to push so hard? What if life, when left to unfold, does so in ways more beautiful than anything your mind could ever orchestrate? Relaxation, then, is not weakness. It is strength rooted in surrender. It is the recognition that you don't need to be on guard every moment of your life. You don't need to tense up in anticipation of what might go wrong. You don't need to plan every step to avoid falling. You can fall, you can stumble, you can make mistakes and still be carried, still be held, still be loved by the very force that gave you breath. The idea that you must be perfect, that you must hold it all together, is just another lie dressed up as responsibility. Real responsibility begins when you stop resisting the truth of what is, when you begin to flow with life rather than bracing against it. This flow is not something you create. It is something you remember. It's already here, always available, beneath the layers of stress and thought and striving. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to wait for some perfect external condition. You simply have to stop fighting the moment. To relax is to say, I trust, not in a blind or naive way, but in a way that comes from deep knowing. Knowing that life is intelligent, knowing that you are part of that intelligence, knowing that even in chaos, something meaningful is unfolding, something that may not make sense to the mind, but speaks to the heart in quiet, gentle whispers. When you relax, you are not giving up, you are giving in to the truth that the universe has always moved with rhythm, not force. The trees don't rush to bloom, the rivers don't force their way to the sea. Nature doesn't operate on stress, it operates on trust. It knows when to grow and when to rest, when to stretch and when to be still, and you, as part of this same nature, carry that same wisdom within you. But it only speaks when you're quiet enough to hear, when the noise of what's next dies down, when the urgency of what should I be doing softens. That's when you hear the whisper of your true self saying, you are already enough. You are already where you need to be. There is a kind of honesty that arrives in these moments of relaxation, an honesty that reveals how much we've been performing, pretending, pushing. And in that honesty, there's an invitation to drop it all, to breathe again, to be again, to stop trying to become and simply be. The irony is that everything we chase in the external world, peace, clarity, connection, arises effortlessly when we relax. It cannot be forced into existence. It comes when there is space for it to enter. And relaxation is that space. It is the doorway through which grace walks in. You don't need to prove your worth by how busy you are. You don't need to exhaust yourself to feel valuable. The need to be constantly occupied is often just a cover for deeper fears. Fear of not being enough, fear of silence, fear of facing yourself without distractions. But when you relax, you begin to see that those fears were like clouds passing through the sky. Temporary, insubstantial. You were never the fear. You were always the sky, vast, open, untouched. In this openness, something beautiful happens. You begin to live from the inside out instead of the outside in. You stop reacting to life and start responding from a place of calm awareness. You move more slowly, but more deliberately. You speak less, but with more meaning. You do less, but what you do has more impact. The frantic need to be everywhere and do everything fades, and what remains is simplicity. And in that simplicity there is depth, there is presence, there is truth. The world may still be chaotic around you, there may still be uncertainty and challenge, but when you are relaxed, you meet it differently. You don't add your own tension to the storm. You become the eye of it, the quiet center. And from that center you see more clearly. You act more wisely. You live more freely. This is the power of trust. This is the strength of relaxation. It is not an escape from reality. It is the full embrace of it, without the armor, without the struggle. It is the natural state you return to when you stop pretending to be in control. The beauty of this state is that it doesn't require anything from the outside. It's not something you achieve by changing your circumstances. It's something you allow right here in the middle of your life exactly as it is. You don't need to fix everything first. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment. The perfect moment is this one, simply because it's real. And when you relax into it, you begin to sense the aliveness that has been here all along, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to stop, to breathe, to trust. There is something quietly astonishing about realizing that every single moment contains the possibility of beginning again. Not tomorrow, not someday after you've fixed your past or sorted through every loose thread of your life, but now, right here, in the most